Hi, in this video we're going to create a weather app in Angular, and this is how it's gonna look like when we are done. To get this information we're gonna be using this website, openweathermap.org, and if you can create a free account you can get 60 calls a minute for free or 1 million calls a month. And we're gonna get this current data and we're gonna look at it closely when we get to that point. I already created this application just to show how it's gonna look like, but we're gonna start from the very beginning and build it from scratch. I already created this folder and I called it Weather Angular, and you can open your VS Code and access that folder from there. I'm gonna do it a little bit differently. I'm gonna click here, type cmd, enter, and in this terminal I'm gonna type code space dot, enter. And VS Code is gonna open that folder. Let me close this get started window. And as you can see, I'm inside this Weather Angular folder. To create our Angular app, I need to access our terminal, and I can just click View, Terminal. And here I'm gonna type ng-new, and the name of our application will be My Weather App. Press enter. Since we won't have multiple components here, I'm gonna say no to that. And I'm going to use regular CSS, so I'm gonna just press enter here. It's gonna take a couple of minutes to create the project. The project is created, and as you can see, I have now a folder, My Weather App. I'm gonna go inside, and all code I'm gonna be working with is gonna be in this source folder. Let me go inside that folder and inside this app folder. If I go to this app component HTML, and it's all generic code, so I can actually run this application and I'll have some results on the screen. Let's run this application, and before we do it we need to go inside this folder. Right now I'm in this main folder that I create, Weather Angular. So to go inside My Weather App folder, I need to type cd, stands for change directory, and I'm gonna type the name of the folder, enter. And now that I'm inside that folder, I'm gonna type ngserve-o, and I type -o because I want a browser to be open and the project would be shown inside that browser. So the project is being compiled, and as you can see it works. So this is my default page. Let me go back here, and I'm gonna press Ctrl A to select everything and delete. I'm gonna save it. And let's go back to our project and look at it again. So as you can see, I have just an empty page. Since we have only one small application, we could put all code inside this app component HTML and app component TS file, but in real life you won't be doing it. You would actually create a component, and this app component HTML is used to assemble with all other components you created. Let's actually create a separate component for our weather app. I'm gonna stop the application, Ctrl C, and to create a new component I'm gonna type ng generate component, and I'm gonna call it weather. Press enter. And you can see on the left side I have a separate folder now, and inside our folder I have all these files related to our component. Let me look at this HTML file, and I have here just only one line that says weather works. So now let's grab this component and place it inside this app component HTML. To do that I'm gonna use this weather component selector. So here it is. I'm gonna go back to app component HTML, open tag, Ctrl S to save, and of course I need to restart our application. Here I'm gonna press arrow up and find the last command I used to start our application, and instead of opening a browser, since it's already open, I'm gonna just type ngserve. After our application was compiled, let's look at it, and as you can see we have just one sentence, weather works. Now to make our application look good, I'm gonna use Bootstrap to style it. So let's install Bootstrap really quick. I'm gonna stop the application, Control C, and I'm gonna type npm install Bootstrap. Press enter. At this point, Angular added Bootstrap packages to this folder node modules, but we also need to let Angular know that we are going to be actually using Bootstrap. To do it, we need to go to this Angular JSON file, and inside this styles array, we need to add one sentence. I'm going to make some space, quotation marks, and I'm going to put comma here. And inside these quotation marks, I need to put a path that will reference one of the Bootstrap files. So to find that path, let's go to that folder node modules. And there are a bunch of folders there. It's hard to find like that. So I'm going to just press Ctrl F and I'm going to type Bootstrap. And as you can see, the folder is right here. I'm going to open it. And I'm going to go inside this distribution folder, CSS. And I need this Bootstrap min CSS file. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click on it, copy path, and I'm going to press Ctrl V to path it here. So now I don't need anything before this node module. So I'm going to remove that. And all backward slashes, I need to replace it with forward slashes. Ctrl S to save. And now I can use Bootstrap anywhere in our application. Let me restart our application to make sure it still works. As you can see, it successfully compiles. Next step, let's go to the Bootstrap website. And I'm going to actually go to Google and type Bootstrap card, enter. Bootstrap version 5, let's go there. And let me scroll down to this point. So this is how the card in Bootstrap looks. So there's a header and there's a body, and that's what we're going to be using for our application. I can go here to the code, and I'm going to just grab the first one right here, right click, copy, and I'm going to go back to our application, and I'm going to go to our weather component. Let me close everything else here. And I'm going to replace this weather works with that code I just grabbed. Ctrl V, Ctrl S to save. And let's see how application looks. So this is our card. The only change I would make at this point, I would just place it in the middle of the screen. Let's go back. And let's place it inside another div. I'm gonna grab all these, Ctrl X, Ctrl V, and I'm gonna add a class here. And I'm gonna call it my container. Ctrl S, let me copy it, Ctrl C, and I'm gonna go to our CSS file. And I'm gonna use a flex box to place it right in the center of the screen. Display flex. Flex direction, it's going to be column. Align items, and we're going to put it in the center. Let me save it, and let's see how it looks. And let's just move it a little bit down. Let's go back to our HTML file, and here let's just change margin bottom to margin, and we're gonna put 5 here. Let me save it, and let's see how it looks. I think it looks okay. And at this point, let's put everything we want to be displayed on the screen before we even get the data from our OpenWeather API. Back to VS Code. Here instead of header, I'm gonna say Minneapolis. And let's put it in the center. Ctrl S. Let's also place it on the right side of the screen so we can actually see it. Let me close this window. Let me close our terminal for now. I don't think we need this header. Let me remove that. And I'm gonna have a few paragraphs. Let me just remove it first. And let's say that's gonna be temperature. Control S to save. And let's make a few more. Control C, Control V. Let's add humidity. And let's have a summary, but I actually want the summary to be in the beginning, so let me take it out of here and put right here. Control S. Now I also want a little degree symbol here, and the way we can do it, I'm gonna Google degree symbol and click on the very first link, and here I'm just gonna copy it. Here in application we're gonna place that symbol in front of our F. Control S. So now it looks much better. Now inside our header, let's place it inside the H2 tag. And here let's mark that we're gonna have an image here. Weather image. So this is our front end. The next step would be getting the data from the Open Weather API and placing it on the screen. Let's go back to our Open Weather API website. So go to this URL and click on sign in. And if you already have an account, sign in. If you don't have it, click on create an account. And you have to enter all this information. And after you're done, click I'm not robot and create an account. And once you are logged in, it's gonna look like that. And after that, you need to create an API key. And here I already have an API key. And if you don't have it, just click on this button, generate. So you're gonna have this API key. And for now, I'm gonna just copy it, Control C, and put it in this notepad. We're gonna be using it. That's pretty much all you need to have from this website. After that, click on this API menu and scroll down where you have all documentation. And we're going to be getting the weather data for one location. So click how to make an API call. And I'm going to scroll down. And here I can see the example of the call by the city name. So let me copy it. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna just open a new tab. And here I'm gonna just place that URL. Let me press enter. So in this response, you can see it says invalid API keys. So everything in these curly braces, including curly braces, we need to replace with our API key. Let me get it. Control C. And I'm gonna place it here. Let me press enter, see what it does. And now we're authorized, but we are not defining the city. So let me go here, it says city name, and I'm gonna remove the curly braces and everything inside of it, and we'll just put something there. Press enter. And as you can see, now I'm getting the weather data for Denver. Let me change it to Minneapolis. Enter. And this is the data we're getting. Let me copy this data. I'm gonna press Control A, Control C, and I'm gonna open another tab, and I'm gonna look for JSON Beautifier. I'm gonna click on this JSON Beautifier link. I'm gonna remove these curly braces, and I'm gonna paste what I copied in that window. And I'm gonna click Beautify. And now you can see better what results we're getting. So everything what's inside the curly braces, it's an object. Inside the square braces, it's an array. And as you can see, we have multiple nested arrays and objects. So here, this is one big object, and this property has a nested object. Same for weather. And the most of the information we're going to be getting from this main property. It's also an object. And as you can see, this temperature does not really look like a real temperature. 272 degrees, it looks a little high, but if you go back to documentation, you can find that we can request temperature in different units. Right now we're getting a standard temperature and it's in kelvins. If you want the temperature in Celsius, you have to use metric. And if you want in Fahrenheit, you need to use this imperial key. Let me copy it. And let's go back to our call. And what we can do, here we can add another parameter. And the way we do it, we're gonna put this and sign. And I'm gonna put units equal imperial. Let me press enter. Let me again copy it, Control A, Control C. Go back here. I'm gonna remove everything. Place it here, beautify. And as you can see, our temperature looks like a real temperature. You can do the same thing if you want the temperature in Celsius. The only thing you need to change here is this imperial to metric. Let me grab this data. As you can see, we have the temperature now in Celsius. So this is the URL we're going to be using to get our data. Let me change it back to imperial, since I'm going to get my temperature in Fahrenheit. And I'm going to keep this window open, so when I need this URL, I can just grab it and put it in my Angular application. Let's go back to our VS Code. I'm going to expand it. Let's close this. And my next step will be creating a service where we're going to be calling our endpoint and from where we're going to be getting our data. So let me go to my terminal. I'm going to stop the application, Control C, and I'm going to create a service. I'm going to call it weather. So ng. Instead of generate, I'm going to just put G, and instead of service, I'm going to just put S, and I'm going to call it weather. Enter. My service has been created. It's right here. And here, line 3 through 5, I have this property root, and it means I can use this service in an entire application. And I have a separate video about services. If you want to know more about it, you can watch it. So for now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a method, and let's just call it getWeather. Inside this method, we're going to call our endpoint, and whatever data we get from there, we're going to return back to our component. To do it, we're going to type return, because we're going to be returning the data. And to create our HTTP request, I need to import first a special module. To do that, I will have to go to this app module TS file. Let me double click on it. And here I need to import a module. I'm going to type import. From Angular common /HTTP. I also need to play this module inside this imports array. Control S to save. And now I can go back to my weather service and use that module to create an HTTP request. To do that, I need to inject an HTTP service inside my constructor. I'm gonna type private, and I'm gonna call it HTTP, and it's gonna be HTTP client. Now here inside my method, I can use it, and I'm gonna type this HTTP. And as you can see, there are quite a few methods. I'm gonna use the get method. And inside the quotation marks, let me put semicolon, I'm gonna put that long URL we already created. I'm gonna copy this URL and paste it inside the quotation marks. Control S to save. Our service is now ready to be used. Let's go back to our weather component, and I'm gonna go to our TypeScript file. And before I use my weather service, I need to inject it inside the constructor. I'm gonna type private, and I'm gonna call it weather service, and it's gonna be a type of our weather service. So it starts with capital W. And as you can see, Angular helped me and imported that service right here. Now I'm gonna call this service after my component is created, and after it's created, this method ngOnInit will be called, and inside I'm gonna use a subscribe method to send that HTTP request from my weather service. It's a long syntax, so I actually created a snippet. I'm gonna type sub, and as you can see, I have this snippet I created, subscribe to service. And here I'm gonna replace this my service with the name of our service. So it's gonna be this weather service. And the name of the method is getWeather. And after subscribe method, we have 3 blocks. The first block is our next block. Let me separate so we can see it better. The next block is our error block, where we handle any errors that might happen. And the last block is our complete block, and it only is going to execute if we successfully get some data here. So as you can see, after we get the data, we're going to console log it. Let's just run the application and see if it works. Let me save it first. And let me go back to the application. I'm going to refresh it. And as you can see, here we have the data displayed on our console. Right now, all this data is hard-coded. Rain, temperature, feels like. So in the next step, we're gonna grab all this data from our HTTP response and replace it inside our card. Let's go back to our VS Code. We will create an object right here. I'm gonna call it my weather. And it's gonna be a type of any. And inside this next method, we're going to assign the data we got from our HTTP request to our object myWeather. So I'm gonna say this myWeather equals to my response. Let's console log it to make sure that we have the data. I have a shortcut for that. I created Control-Shift-L, and inside I'm gonna put this weather. Control-S to save. And now in our application, we should have 2 objects. One from this console log and one from this console log. At this point, we are ready to display the data from this object to our user. Let's create a few more variables. The first one will be temperature. And it's going to be number. And let's assign it initially to 0. Now inside our next block, we're gonna use it, this temperature. This weather, my weather. And I took a screenshot of our object. So it's gonna be .main.temp. Let me save it. And let's open our HTML file. And here we're going to use a string interpolation syntax. So double curly braces. Temperature. Let me save it and see if it works. Control S. Let's go to our application. And as you can see, we have our temperature that we received from our HTTP service. Let's do the same thing for feels like temperature, pressure, and humidity. Go back to our component TS file. Feels like temperature. And we're gonna have a string variable for our summary. And initially it's going to be an empty string. Let's go down to our next block, and we're going to assign all those variables to appropriate values. Feels like temperature. Let's look at our object. It's going to be feels underline like. Gonna copy this. Next will be humidity. Pressure. And the summary. The summary is going to be actually in a different place. So instead of going to main, we're going to weather.main. Let me save it and go to our HTML file. And here we're going to do the same thing, replacing numbers with the string interpolation syntax. And for the summary, we're going to do the same thing. Let's save it and try it. Everything worked with the exception of our summary. Let's look what happened there. Here it looks all okay. Let me go to our TS file. Let me look at our object again. And I can see the problem here. So this weather property is an array of objects, and we have only one object with the index 0. So I need to fix that. So this is gonna be our first object. I'm gonna put 0. Let me save it and see if it worked. And as you can see, we have our summary here. In the next step, let's display an image related to this weather. Our API actually provides us the way to do it. In the documentation, if you go to this URL, /weather conditions, you will see that in your API response, you're getting this code of the icon. Here it's 10n. And if you scroll down, you can see that you can construct this URL and get an image for that particular code. Let me copy this URL and let's go back to our VS Code. Here let's create another variable. We can call it icon URL, and it's going to be a string, and initial value will be empty string. Save it. Here let's create this URL, quotation marks, and let me paste that URL I just grabbed. Now this 10D code is hard-coded, we need to replace it, so that's what we're gonna do. And let's look at our chart again. It's going to be in the same location where we have our summary, but the property is going to be called icon. I'm gonna copy it, place it here, and instead of main, it's gonna be icon. Control S to save. And let's go back to our HTML file. And here we're gonna insert an image. And for source, we're gonna use again string interpolation syntax, icon URL. For alt, let's put description. It's gonna be our weather image. And this is for accessibility purposes, so the screen reader knows what this image is about. I'm gonna save it. And let's look at our application. Our application is, for the most part, is done. We could probably do a couple improvements to our application. Right now, this CD is hard-coded and also the units are hard-coded. Let's change it really quick. In my TS file, I'm gonna create another variable CD. It's going to be a string. And initial value will be Minneapolis for now. And we'll create another variable units. And it's going to be imperial. And let's change our service, so we're actually sending this variable to our service when we're getting our data. So we're gonna go to our weather service. And here in our method we'll be expecting two variables. One is city, that is gonna be a string. And another will be units, that will also be a string. Let's put inside our URL. I'm gonna break it down. And here instead of Minneapolis, it's gonna be city. Let's look at our units. Same thing we're gonna do here. Let's save it, Control S, let's go back. And now this underline, because it's expecting two arguments, so we're gonna put, first it's gonna be this city. And this units. I have to change it here too. I misspelled it. Let me save it. And let's check if our application is still working. It does. Let's change Minneapolis to, let's say, London. Let me save it. Let's look at our application. And the temperature changed, but we still have Minneapolis here, because we need to go to our HTML file and change this hard-coded Minneapolis to our city. Control S, let's look. And of course, I have extra curly brace. I hope this video was helpful and thank you for watching.